Please join me in welcoming Andrew Al.
Thank you for the introduction. I spent a lot of time in sales, starting from when I was an estimator for a construction company for a number of years. And I've sold to VCs, I've sold to enterprises, so I'm familiar with the B2B buying process. And so I've seen this rapid pace of change that we're dealing with. And I'd say that the best sales professionals that I sit down with are asking themselves a fundamental question, which is, am I a good sales professional today? So as we think about the sales profession, the goalposts have shifted in so many ways. To the people that we're selling to what the buyers actually want from us, to the tooling that we're actually using to be successful. But the one thing that has changed is that nothing happens until someone sells something. Sales is the lifeblood of every single organization. And it doesn't matter how talented you are from an ops perspective or a marketing perspective or a finance perspective. These jobs don't exist unless the people in this room are closing deals. Right? That's the lifeblood of every single organization. And there was a study done of the top 500 sales organizations in the world. And the results showed that for every salesperson in the organization, they support 14 jobs. 14 jobs for every one salesperson. Now, the value of sales hasn't changed. The why hasn't changed, but the how has changed. So when we look at the marketplace today, what are we seeing? We hear this term digital transformation. What does that mean? It's this collision of our digital and our physical worlds. Okay, just think about how you consume content on Netflix or how you buy on Amazon. We are in the thick of this digital transformation. Let's use phones as an example. Mobile devices, which have been around for less than 50 years, and we've got more mobile devices than we do people in the world. So we're in the thick of this digital transformation. So what does this mean from a business opportunity standpoint? From any change, there's always good and there's always bad. The good side is that it's estimated that digital transformation will bring us $100 trillion in economic opportunity over the next 10 years. Here's the risk, is that change is hard. And when we look at the Fortune 500 list, since the year 2000, over half of that list is turned over. And it's hardest for the large enterprises to make these changes because we're invested in infrastructure. We've got legacy processes. We've got hierarchy. We've got silos. And that's what makes change very difficult. We talk a lot about artificial intelligence, and I'm going to take a moment to explain what that actually is and what is it not. Where AI becomes meaningful is when we apply it to real prediction problems. This is a prediction problem. If we know that this machine will fail in 500 hours, that's a prediction problem. We can go out to customers proactively and sell them the right service the very first time. And so a lot of the tech companies say it's an AI-first world. I believe it's a human-first world because this is what it's about. It's about being human. Knowing that that machine fails, as a salesperson, you know the right product that you need to sell. As a customer, you got reduced downtime. I want to put this thought in your mind. Technology impacts our lives when it makes something fundamentally cheap. At that moment, when the cost bottoms out, is when it changes our lives. So let's use artificial light as an example. Today, we don't really give much thought to how much artificial light we use. We leave our lights on, we turn them off, it's not a big deal. In the 1800s, it would have cost us 400 times the amount it costs us today for the same amount of light. And so what happened was the cost of artificial light significantly dropped. And this lit up our world, literally. It allowed us to turn night into day, extend our work days, allow us to be more productive. And in fact, if you think about every single innovation or invention would not have been possible had the cost of artificial light not bottomed out. And so this is what we're seeing with AI. AI is becoming cheap. It is the new artificial light of the 21st century. How does AI and humans, how do machine and humans work together? Does this mean that we become less relevant in the sales process? And I think it's actually quite the opposite. And there's two sort of areas or spectrums of the sales process. There's one, we've got low dollar value items, simple transactions, low risk of making a bad decision. That's all the stuff we buy on Amazon. Sales can't add a lot of value in that scenario. And that's why it's being automated, and it will continue to be automated. For the products that we're selling in this room, that are complex products, high dollar value, long sales cycles, high risk of making the wrong decision, the buyers need people to guide them through that journey. They need salespeople. And so I believe that the future is very bright for the sales profession, particularly when it comes to these kind of sales. As I talk about this transformation, it's really hard for us as humans to feel or identify the transformation that's happening when we're in it, because we're way too close to it. And we tend to think, the way the world is now, the way it's always been, and things are really not going to change that much. Until it completely changes. So let's look at what the evolution of the sales, the value of sales. Let's take a look at a quick evolution here. This is really the birth of sales. It's really when you looked at the first industrial revolution. But before that, when merchants made their goods, they couldn't make enough goods to meet the demand. Whatever they made, they sold. You didn't really need to sell anything, you just make it and it goes. With the Industrial Revolution, and when we were able to scale production, and Levi's was one of the first companies to do that with denim, we now all of a sudden had a surplus of supply that exceeded demand. So the customer need that we were solving as a salesperson, at first it was lack of access. Then it shifted in the early 1900s to awareness. Customers lacked awareness, and as salespeople, we still had access to information that they didn't have access to. Competition grew, multiple companies started entering the same industries, and we had to now inform customers, give them information of why our product was superior. And that's why we saw classic artists turn into graphic designers. And we saw writers turn into copywriters because we needed to solve that problem of awareness. That was the customer problem. And we fast forward today, the customer problem is a lack of time. A lack of time and a lack of attention because they are swimming in information. Today, if we want to be successful as sales reps, we can't call them just to give them more information. They are swimming in information. What we need to be is the consultant on the side to help make sense of all of this data that they have access to. And so as you think about looking ahead, we're no longer the driver as a sales professional. We're the co-driver. We're sitting in the passenger seat, and our role is to make sure that the customer knows where to turn. That the customer knows that, hey, here are the pain points, here's the potholes that we need to watch out for. But that's our role. We're the co-driver. We're no longer the driver. The other thing that's driving up the complexity of the B2B buying experience is that there's more people involved in the buying process. On average, it's 7 people involved in the B2B buying process. That's 7 different people that you need to cater to and different needs. And that's why it's important that sales and marketing, that has to work together. They say it takes 6 to 10 touches to get into a meeting with a prospect. And so we need to get really good at how we sequence these experiences. Articles, white papers, quoting in social, we need to mix up how we touch the customer. And again, really important to be working with marketing on this, but also very important from a sales perspective to use the CRM tools, because how can you sequence that? How can you physically remember to do that? You scale that out across 50 customers. You can't. You have to use the CRM tools if you want to be successful. Now, the point here is that we need to rely on data to keep us honest. to break through some of the biases and the limitations that we have. We need to be using the dashboards that we're given. We need to be using these CRM tools better so that we can be a better farmer. And it's not about not being a hunter. It's about taking that energy and channeling it into also being a farmer. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be both. But that's the shift that we need to make. A lot of people make the classification, well, it's B2B versus B2C. It doesn't matter. It's H to H. It's human to human. At the end of the day, technology helps us build better relationships. Those relationships might play out online, they might play out offline. It doesn't matter, but they're helping you build greater relationships. They can. So as we think about where do we go from here, some key takeaways is how do we be the best co-driver? How do we guide our buyers up that mountain? Because they're in the sea of information and they don't know what to make sense of it. They need something that's actionable. So how do we guide them in that process? The other thing is how do we add value to our network? So for LinkedIn, one of the first steps that sales professionals usually take is they want to spend at least 1 hour a day. Spend 1 hour a day on LinkedIn in the morning so you can start engaging with your customers' content. When was the last time you replied on something, liked something, engaged with the content, not just read it? Today's stats are that 70% of purchases or B2B purchases, and 70% of the cases, they're going on social to find information. That's today. For millennials, who are now 19 to 39, by the way, single largest generation of the workforce, and coming into decision-making roles, that number is not 70, it's 90. 90% are going on social when they're making B2B buying decisions to inform them. And this framework here that I'm showing you, this is a framework that we use for a lot of large cap organizations when we talk about change management, we talk about adopting new tools. These are 5 steps that you guys can take. First is reason. Understand that if we don't evolve as sales professionals, it's not a matter of if we fail, it's a matter of how fast we fail. Crucial that we evolve. The buying process has evolved, we need to evolve. Second thing is the triggers, is understanding what are those triggers? Location, people, emotional state that get us back into these old habits of not using the technology, not using the CRM platforms. What are those triggers that take us back? Understand, to identify what those are. And the third thing is develop a micro habit that you could do in 60 seconds to break that urge. So maybe that's just taking your phone out, logging into LinkedIn, open the app, log into the CRM. Whatever it is, it needs to be quick and easy for you to do. So you develop a micro habit. You got to practice. Obviously, it takes discipline to be to spend that time on LinkedIn, to data mine, to identify prospects, to set those triggers, to really farm. So it takes discipline and practice to do that. And the last point here is, how do you plan for when you fall off the wagon? And it's going to happen multiple times. But identifying what is that ritual that helps you reset is really, really important to that process. Here's the reality, is that the world that we're trained to sell in is just not the world that we're selling in today. It's completely changed. And I told you already that we have a hard time identifying change. To identifying change when we're in the thick of it. We are in the thick of it, but we cannot wait for this to completely blow us by, and we can look back in the rearview mirror and say, yeah, we saw that coming. Can't afford to do that. So today, more than ever, we need to embrace this change.